9:30, we'll call the meeting to order. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the agenda. Any additions or corrections?
I have two changes to make to the agenda. The first is under the consent agenda, the last item, approving a competitive search for a jailer dispatcher. We have, the sheriff has pulled back a job offer, so we need to make that a search for 2 jailer dispatchers, and would like to do that through the creation of an applicant pool. So we've got 2 to search for there now. And the previous applicant pool is expired, so we need to go out for an applicant pool there. And then the second change is under the action items. The information is in the board packet, but I missed it on the action items, and that's to approve the Towards Zero Death grant application for the sheriff's office. So.
This is different from the one we just did for public health?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
They both get different grants for different use of it.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the agenda with those 2 changes?
So moved. Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approval of the minutes from the September 10th board meeting and September 17th work group session. I did go through them pretty thoroughly myself, so I will make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Public comment period. Is there anybody who wishes to address the board this morning? Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. I think we all reviewed it in our packet. Anybody want to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion?
I just have a question, and I guess there's nobody here from the sheriff's department, but
Mm-hmm.
it seems to be a revolving door for the dispatcher thing. I mean, is there something we can tweak? Is there?
It's a combination. Some of it is folks moving on to further their law enforcement career. Some of it's decide that's an environment they're not comfortable working in. So it's a variety of reasons behind
So there's
folks
not
going.
There's not a single fix we could do.
Not a single fix, no. I think the sheriff has talked several times about the pros and cons of separating the dispatcher and jailer duties.
Yeah.
I think you would reach a different pool of people. There are those that are well suited for one and not the other per se, and so that's something to consider as we go forward down the road.
Okay. All right.
The downside is, that's with the size of staff and the size of population, it's nice to have that
Combination.
Otherwise we'd have double the employees, basically.
Yeah.
But you would probably have a better retention because some people just like to do the dispatching and
Yep.
concentrate on that.
Yep.
Don't you think that dispatching is part of the problem as far as the pressure that the dispatchers face? From the perspective of the calls they get and the tension that's...
Well, it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
The jailer part isn't as tension related as the dispatcher.
Well, I know there's a former employee, he'd rather just do the dispatching, didn't want to deal with the jailing part of it.
Okay.
It goes both ways, but
Mhm.
dispatching would be more stressful a job, I'm sure of that.
I wonder if at some point in the fairly near future, we could have Mark come in and give us
quite a bit of background on it.
Okay.
I know when I was first on the board, I heard a little bit about this, and nothing seemed to materialize after that, and we're still having the same sort of problem. Maybe we need to listen quite a bit, see what's going on, see if we can figure something out.
Okay. Will do.
All in favor of approving the consent agenda?
Aye.
Opposed? Well, we have 10 more minutes before we can do the public hearing. So maybe we should start on the action items. Okay,
Skip
we'll
the
start
first
with
one
number
first.
two.
Yep.
We got in our packet the
Mhm.
2020 pictometry contract for aerial imagery.
This is the way that's been done in the past, and we're continuing to do it, is it's essentially a 6-year contract, and it's a 2-phase, and so the flights happen every 3 years. The next scheduled flight would be in 2020. What we've changed from the previous contract to this one is, with prices and camera changes and things, the resolution. We're going from a 12-inch overall resolution down to a 6-inch, 9-inch resolution for the whole county. And in the past, we've done 3-inch resolution over the cities. I contacted the cities and asked them, from a county perspective, that's beyond what we need. From a city perspective, Caledonia was the only one interested in continuing that, and when I shared asked if they were interested in cost sharing it, they decided they didn't need it that badly either. So we can get a better shot overall of the entire county for cheaper than what we were getting of the city county before. So our cost goes down. There is an additional, still cheaper overall, but there is an additional feature in this contract. And the last flight in 2017 established a baseline of facility footprints. And so in the 2020 imagery, we will be getting, the software will be able to show us where facility footprints have changed. And so zoning will be able to see where new cabins and such have cropped up. The assessor's office will be able to see where additions and things have happened. Obviously we're not going to assess just off an image, but it gives them an idea of where they need to go looking for new changes that maybe we didn't know about in the past. So
And that's part of the fee, it's not a new,
it's a separate line item in the cost.
oh,
Yeah, but still cheaper overall than what we were getting before. Yep. So the overall contract cost is about $6,000 a year cheaper, and this contract comes out of the compliance funds.
Okay.
So we need a motion to approve the contract.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion?
Just one question.
Yeah.
Did you find in the contract where it's us, not MCC?
I've not had a chance to look at it since we discussed that this morning.
Okay.
I will verify that before we sign and send.
Right.
Yep.
Just in reading the contract, I see where MCC is the contract, but it's MCC that they keep talking about in there. I don't see where Houston County is named in the contract until you get to the bottom.
All of our Beacon, Schneider contracts do run through our Minnesota County's computer co-op. Our billings come
Right.
from,
that's why it's that way.
that's why it's that way.
So the contract is with MCCC, and we'll have a contract with them.
We have a contract with them for this.
With the
So
co-op.
MCC is paying the 57,000 something, and that's what we're
And then
agreeing
they
to.
bill us.
They're gonna bill us.
Right.
So this contract isn't with Houston County, it's with MCC, just states us as the user. So we're approving a contract that we're not named in, other than the user.
In
Okay.
effect,
But we're paying the bill.
Right. But the contract we're approving is between MCC
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Pictometry. We know we're gonna pay Pictometry, but we'll also have a contract with Pictometry or some kind of an agreement already. Okay. That was my only question.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Okay, consider approving the 2019-21 Off-Highway Vehicle Enforcement Grant Program. I don't think Sheriff England is not here.
No, he's fine. He got a contract of it. This, he intends to use the funds to replace or upgrade the four-wheeler with a side-by-side. And this is a standard grant program that comes through. We've been getting it for several years.
I read in there where they include some training, or is that for public training, or is it for training of the people of the county that's using, the staff that uses it?
I read that too, but I thought it said staff time.
All right.
Yeah, I think it's staff time.
I took it to mean that we were the staff was training public improper.
Well,
on
that's
safe.
I was kind of reading that too, where that's what I was just kind of wondering.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if that's part of in order to get the grant, we have to do this to get the money to, I guess, if the sheriff's not here, we can't answer that, but.
There's reporting requirements that, I assume that's, you don't just report that you bought a side-by-side, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's
There's other things that you
qualifications,
gotta
yeah,
do.
yeah.
Is there a motion to approve the grant program?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Consider approving the 2019 prioritized bridge replacement resolution. Brian, do you need to address anything on that? You were
Yeah,
on.
you do.
Apparently you do.
It was a pretty detailed list.
Yep, so this is something we do every year. So what we do is we update our 5-year bridge replacement program, and this list goes on to the state. They use it to compile a list of what they feel is going to be needed around the entire state over the next 5 years for planning and budgeting purposes. Big changes, I guess, or the primary changes is the top 2 bridges on the list, Iton Creek Drive and Lorenz Road. Those 2 projects were on the 2019 schedule due to permitting and funding. Those projects both look like they're going to be 2020 projects now instead of 2019. So we pushed those back and added those on the 2020 schedule. And then in 2024, we added 2 bridges, one on Haugie Hill Road and on Oakland Drive. So that's that 5th year out that we need to keep adding bridges to that. So everything else, I believe, has stayed the same as far as the years on the schedule. So then this will go up to the state. They will have a copy of that list, and they'll know what we're looking at doing. This does not lock us in, to making changes next year or future years. If we have projects that need to get pushed up or pulled back, we can still make adjustments, but it's kind of a planning list.
So you're gonna have 5 bridges next year to do?
Assuming that we can get the funding, we'll try to get them all done. There was not a bonding bill at the state level this last year. The funding is really tight for township bridges. We might need to push back a bridge or 2 if we can't get enough funds. We do not have enough funds in our own town bridge account to do those. We'll need to get special state money for that. So that is the goal, though.
So if you pick and choose, do you pick by time frame, or you pick by priority for bridge quality or bridge?
All of the above. Yeah, so I'll look at what's ready, what we think is going to be ready for next year. If we believe the 2 bridges both can be ready around the same time, we'll do the one that we feel is in the worst condition. If we have, it all depends on kind of scheduling of how things go. We don't want to delay and wait too long for one bridge, thinking another one's going to be ready. The next thing you know, you can't get either one of them done. There is a couple bridges that are fairly high dollar amount and stuff too. So, cost-wise, funding might allow us to do 2 bridges if we go pick these 2 versus 1 bridge if we go the other route. So we might need to look at kind of which way we go.
So the Looney Valley Road Bridge, that's a fairly expensive one. That'll probably be one that gets pushed back, you're thinking?
I would like to see that one being done. I know that's a timber, has timber piling, timber abutments. That is a bridge that is a high priority bridge for the state. Good chance that's the type of bridge that they will get us money to get done because
Okay.
they do want that. However, with them being pinched tight on money, it might not be able to get the money. We don't have enough money in our town bridge account to do that one on its own. Our town bridge account, we get less than $700,000 per year. That bridge alone is more than that, so.
Mhm.
Is there a motion to approve the prioritized bridge replacement resolution?
So moved.
Second?
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Being it's 9:46, we need to go into our public hearing portion of this. So I think we need a motion to go into a public hearing.
Motion to recess?
Yep.
I'll make a motion to recess to go into public hearing on fee schedules.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved. Okay, I think we all have copies of the fee.
Yeah.
Both
Commissioners, y'all have
printed.
a copy in front of you. Craig, you had a copy. There's some extra copies on the back there, so. Had a couple of late changes and additions from department heads last night, so those are reflected now on the printed copy you have in front of you.
Okay.
Nothing substantial. I think the only monetary change was for the auditor treasurer tax certificates. $2 for those certificates, or was $2, is now $5. So overall, general fees and such have remained very similar. We've updated the fee per hour for employee time, and that's based off of a 2020 pay schedule, and the statutory method for calculating that based off of the lowest income employee in there. Many of the fees are just updated to be closer to actual cost. I think the significant changes are in the soil and water, environmental services with septic permits, zoning permits, and public hearings. And those costs there are some of the bigger changes. And then the other big change would be in the solid waste and recycling. And again, as we've discussed when we were reviewing the fees, the intent is to cost share those expenses with the folks using the service, but yet still keep the fees low enough that it's still enticing to use the recycling and reuse center instead of the ditches. So, if anybody has any specific concerns, we can address those, and then I guess it's open to public for comment and discussion.
So we can address if we have a question on.
Do the public hearing first, and then
Okay.
we can get into specifics.
All right.
If there's public comment.
Question,
Mhm.
notary fee, no charge.
Correct.
Is that, okay. Do we do this just for non-government, or do we do it, I mean, if somebody comes in off the street, we don't do free notary for anybody who drives up, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we do.
Yep.
If you need
Yep.
something notarized, you can come to
And
the
you-
courthouse to do it.
You can't charge, well,
We do not have public notary service.
Oh,
We send them to the banks or the attorney's office.
Yeah,
We don't wanna be liable for notarizing something that would happen to come like through our office to be.
Maybe
recorded.
conflict, yeah.
Yes.
okay.
We don't recommend it.
so,
We send them, they usually come to our office A lot of times it will say, there's nobody in the county, you know, we do it, whereas we have notaries within the county, but we do it for our own personal, you know, own office work.
So, should that be clarified somehow?
Yeah, who's that listed under, I'm sorry? Is that
Well,
That's
under
under-
the, under the.
Under
fee-
general fees,
Okay.
That'd be
first
a-
page.
Policy
Yep.
question, but not a fee thing.
We haven't previously had that on prior, that I remember.
So maybe just delineate it would be the best.
Okay.
Okay,
If your interest is going maybe with past practice
yeah.
for the, foregone statement.
I can just cross the line out together. If we're not doing it, we're not doing it. Okay.
So we're gonna eliminate that
Yep,
line item
we'll just strike that
total.
line item, yep. Okay.
Under my fees, you just need to change that under the vitals, it's a fetal death report and a fetal death certificate. You can't issue a fetal death certificate for statute,
Okay.
and that might have been my error. You could change the certificate report.
Can do.
And the other recommended change would be under the general fees. Those are for public documents, not for people requesting private information about themselves. Public information.
Yeah.
What do you mean about themselves?
Okay, you have non-public information and you have public information, so anybody can request information regarding what's your fee schedule or what's your process for searches or whatever. But if a person is making a request about information that's maintained on them, their personal private information, that would be covered under this fee schedule.
Okay, so that's just a,
Private data.
just a footnote to add for that then, yep.
And so we do, I'd recommend,
Mhm.
if I have to track the statute that refers to the public documents and request for public information for search and retrieval.
That's the employee time for research, compile, and
This
retrieve
one,
data.
Mhm. And the copies and scanning and copying, yep.
The statute refers to not research, but just searching for the document and retrieving it. And not compiling it in a particular, I'm not required to compile it in any particular order. That is to retrieve it and copy it. So search and retrieve.
There's two lines on here though, I mean, one is the employee time, it says research, compile, retrieve. Next one is the scanning, copying, and emailing. Which one are we clarifying here?
Employee time and research.
Second and third block, or the fourth block.
Okay. This one.
Yep.
Yep.
2645.
Where you're,
Here,
We'll clean up the notes on that. I cut and pasted the old version.
Okay.
We'll clean that up.
The other one is just, the fifth one is the scanning public information, copying public information. Okay, I understand.
question under recorder, genealogy research,
Yes,
is that really what it costs to do it, $20 an hour?
sometimes you can get very involved in someone's genealogy, researching for hours.
Well, I guess I'm asking on the lower end, are we charging enough to do that? I mean,
That's what I have to charge by statute.
By statute.
you have no choice.
I wish.
Do we have a choice to even do it?
service that, yeah.
the service. More so in the wintertime versus the summertime, which is a slower time for us, but that's something that we can do.
They don't care
It's
where,
not something we do as a top priority. That is, you know, our documents and our recording things, that kind of stuff, and like our abstract or something, that comes before genealogy search, that is on the back burner. Always.
okay,
We tell them they can certainly come in and search all they want themselves. We give people a lot of resources, like we have a statewide marriage program now that anybody can look at. We give the Minnesota Historical Society out, we give our Houston County Historical Society name and number out in their hours. You know, we do try to steer them away, but when we do get a search, we do charge.
okay. But in the summer, they're not as interested in where their old
People
relatives
actually
are.
come here. No, people actually come here more in the summer than sending in the mail.
Really?
Yeah, we get a lot of people that walk in and they stay all day,
Huh,
looking up through their records. Yep. That's amazing.
yeah,
They'll come from all over.
okay.
Gary used to be one, and she's gonna go back to being a genealogy searcher. She used to go to South Dakota and search her family tree.
All right, thanks.
Teresa, I have a question on the fourth block. Under B, it says 2645, but under change, oh, I'm sorry, I misread.
Okay.
Never mind.
Any other public comment?
Well, as the public is out there, I would recommend under the alcohol and tobacco licenses permits, that 1 to 3 day, 3.2 beer license, and this is just a picayune thing, but $5 plus $1 a day thereafter for up to 3 days. Can't we just make it $10, and if it's 1, 2, or 3 days, that's what it is?
Sure.
Where are you, Bob?
Page
Well.
2, third from the top, back of the first page, third from the top.
Yep, I see.
Make it just an even $10.
Instead of going to the $1 for the next day and $1 for the, it's just $10, and if you got 1, 2, or 3, that's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But what about the person that only needs it for 1 day?
Pay $10. The dollar and $1. I think we're cheap on our licenses for liquor and alcohol and tobacco the way it is, so.
All in all, there's not very many of them,
No.
so you're,
Especially for 3-2 beer, huh?
It's like wedding parties in the barn up on the ridge
Mm-hmm.
and whatnot.
I guess I'm just curious, why wine is so much higher? Is there some rationale?
I explained that to you before.
You did?
Yeah.
Re-explain it.
I can't do that. It wouldn't be appropriate.
Well,
I don't know the original basis of this. The auditor treasurer did not propose a change to the fees, so I didn't research the background on it. These fees have been established at these rates for at least 4 or more years.
to be honest, I didn't know there was a separate wine.
I don't know that we have,
That's liquor.
I'd have to look and see if we've even had separate wine applicants.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Seems strange. Okay,
Oh, these wine tasting events are happening more often, probably.
yeah.
So Bob, you're saying you wanna change that?
I would just ask him, instead of
I mean, or
$5 and
it's just-
$1 and $1, just go to $10 and be done with it if it's 1, 2, or 3 days. If you think that's, otherwise $5 in 1, 2, or 3 days, because the $1 and $1 is kind of goofy,
Yeah.
my opinion. $1 a day doesn't make sense.
We change that one to $10 unless there's any, I'll double check that there's nothing statutory
This is
that.
kind of a picayune thing,
affects it.
so
Yeah, whatever, I guess I don't have a problem.
it isn't gonna make any difference one way or the other.
So is this the time to ask about another fee that's
Sure,
Sure.
yes.
address signs, highway department. It's gone from 130 to 170 and 65 to 90.
Yeah, that is the cost of our labor. You need to go out there, do a mark location, do a over one call, come back a second time to put posts in the sign. It's 2 trips, average distance, and time around the county to put them in. The previous fees was enough for our cost.
But that gets passed down to the townships, correct?
That gets passed on to the townships, and then the townships come back and pass it on to their constituents, so I do something.
Well, they haven't been, but I know it's a major cost. It's become one. I mean, these signs that have come out to the townships started out free, but they're not free anymore on maintaining them, and it's getting to be a pretty good size expense. I know there's gonna be some unhappiness there with that, raising it that much.
And that's your cost, so that's what you guys can run to, then the county, that cost for the townships.
I think that the free was when they went through and initially set them.
Yep.
And then after that, it was supposed to be, like he said, then they're going out for just that one trip. So if you weren't under the initial blanket setting of them, then there is a cost.
Right.
I guess I would think of it as, the trip charges that are assessed by so many private providers of, whether it's a garage door or whatever. I've had that discussion numerous times, like, when am I supposed to bring the garage door over? You know, of course you got a trip charge, but, yeah, but that's an expense, driving over, driver time. So I think you've made the same rationale for us, so it's really a user fee of sorts. You want the sign, so.
Well, we didn't have much choice in the signs, but, I just know that it's a major expense, becoming a major expense for the townships, and they're not gonna be, happy about the increase.
That's if they don't pass it on to the resident. Or are these the signs for?
Well, I mean, how.
Street sign.
That's a policy for them to decide, but, the only way they could pass on is in their levy, but.
But this is address signs for individuals, right? I mean, for their, this
This is
isn't a
for the
street sign.
roads.
You said the E911 sign.
E911 signs, like the roads, out in the country.
It's, no, this isn't, is this street signs or is this residential signs?
This is the E911 signs that show the address signs in front of people's houses.
For their houses, for their residents. So the township, and this is for new signs, so the township could pass that along to the new landowner,
Yep.
or a new residence, or new whatever needs a sign.
Well, no, if an old one needs to be replaced, then that's part of this fee too, right?
Yep, there's a lot of times where they get knocked out or they get damaged. and-
Or they're faded, they need to be, they don't, yep.
Yep.
Now, this is just the E911 signs, not like the directional stop sign.
All the other ones just go, they bill back to the township at the,
What rate is that? Or it depends on the kind of sign, I know that.
kind of sign.
If it's a two-post or,
It's E9 plus material.
Yeah.
or type of material.
I believe there are some townships that bill the person requesting the sign back. I know when folks ask for an address, I will tell them that depending on how your township handles this, you may ultimately get a bill for the cost of the installation and the fabrication of that sign. I don't know which townships do that, but I don't want people, I guess I want people to know that that might be coming when they ask for one. So it's, I don't think they're all handling it, but
Is a resident allowed to come and get the sign and put it up themselves?
oh,
No?
Haven't allowed that before in the
Okay.
past, because that we uniformity.
Yeah.
They're all at a great spot. County could consider allowing people to do that. Destination, take place when the sheriff's office, that would also be
includes you still have to go off and verify that it was correct, so that wouldn't really save on that.
Well, if you verified it one trip versus two, there's always two
That's
trips
true.
with that LPA.
How did you come up with that figure? Just what you think that you need to cover it, or?
Yeah, so we looked at the average, we have our 20 hours, we have our truck time plus 1 hour, average travel time around the county plus the post and the sign costs. So I don't have it broken down right in front of me, but we did look at number of hours per trip, 2 trips. What would be the install?
So if you live right on the border with Fillmore County, or you live right next to the city limits of Caledonia, it's the same price either way,
Yep.
just based on the average.
Yeah, we don't wanna get into, someone that's
Yeah.
a mile from the sign shop pays $20, and someone that's in the far corner of town pays, $300, so.
Simpler record keeping for you guys.
I guess I'd like to see it stay the same, and we could absorb that cost and not have to pass it to the townships.
But it's really not the benefit of the township. The sign is the benefit for the person that needs the sign, the resident. So I don't understand why the township wouldn't pass it on to the property owner. I know it's a service that some townships provide and some bill them for.
That's how it started out, yeah.
Brian, how many new address signs do we do a year?
I don't know offhand, but I know that, with
Ballpark.
county.
Well, it'd be for every new home. You know, and that's probably,
And not just new homes, it'd be replacement of old ones too.
well, yeah, exactly, so you're probably 100, I'm guessing.
And a lot of it's replacement, whether,
And I don't even know that one.
if it gets run over or,
But
faded.
if you're putting up a $200,000-300,000 house, the cost of a sign is really minor, $200.
So,
And you are adding a tax base to the townships.
I guess I would comment that we get a good amount of requests now for address for non-houses. Anything that-
Sheds as well.
Sheds, right, if they want electricity, it seems like the electric companies want them to have an address. Many of the lumber yards want an address because they'll deliver product or they'll get, perhaps in the past, it was relegated to simply houses. Now, we're getting more and more requests for all other types of uses, any other type of development. We also have folks who are just concerned that there'll be a need for an emergency call, and they'll want to have the fastest response time, so they want that address there, so folks, emergency responders, it's not just houses.
well, we could take and split the difference. Instead of going to 170, go to 150 and go to 675 instead of 65. Cover some of the additional cost. Township gets some and the county gets some.
I think that would be a good compromise, to go 150 and 75. When we review these, we're supposed to review our fee schedule annually, so we could change it if we
Yeah.
want to next year. Kind of compromise this year.
I could live with that.
Turning the page.
Any other public comment on fees on the pages you have?
On the last page, I'll ask the question with regard to solid waste and recycling and the household garbage. $2 for a 30-gallon bag, $2.50 for a 45, and a $2 minimum. The $2 minimum is if they bring in a great big bag, I mean, you can get bigger than 45-gallon bags, that'll stay at $2.50. And the minimum, if they bring in like a
Shopping bag?
shopping bag, yeah. So you bring in a little bit, it's $2. If you bring in the 35-gallon, it's $2. And if it's bigger than like 45 or beyond, it's the $2.50. Is that about right?
I think the goal there is to try to standardize the sizes that go in there, so that we're not trying to get a on-the-fly price out for, I'm gonna throw this plastic grocery bag in there, how much for that? 45 cents. We wanna have it in a nice bottom floor.
The minimum is $2, doesn't matter what it is.
Ideally, that would come in a standard size 30-gallon bag.
We just change that to 30-gallon or under. $45-gallon or over. Leave it to the discretion of the folks working out there to assess the right amount.
Did you say 250 for a 45-gallon bag or over?
I'll just leave that one as the same, but I would leave the $2 per 30-gallon bag or smaller. The folks out there at the site have the discretion to, people bring in some non-standard stuff to eyeball it and say that looks like about 30 gallons worth.
If somebody brings in a giant bag that's like a 55-gallon drum type bag, that's gonna be $2.50 also.
No, I guess we're trying to limit the things that go into that compactor to 45 standard size containers. So if you brought in a 55-gallon barrel, I suppose you would be looking at maybe, and again, it would be handled by the folks who worked up there, and they would assess that based on these different units we've sent here. So maybe they would say it's 50 for the first 45, and then another 2 for the Delta, or another 1 for the Delta. That's the guidance we can provide the workers out there, so they have something to go with.
I guess I only ask from personal experience. I got those giant, huge black bags that are more than 45 gallons. And if I'm doing a cleanup and I don't put it on the curb, I bring it out there, and $2.50 seems cheap for that. So it's their discretion to go above that. Right?
But we're keeping it out of the ditch.
Oh, I know that. I'm just saying that they, you know, I'm just talking personal experience, that the giant bags that I bring when I'm cleaning out the basement or whatnot,
So that might.
$2.50 is cheap.
Well, you could always donate more.
I do, but you know, but
I guess
it's their discretion then to charge more for something bigger than 45 gallons.
Or that might not be household garbage. What we're looking at here at household garbage is the commonly found household receptacles. Whereas if you're getting a contractor bag and cleaning out your garage, you know, that might be a different form of debris. That might not be something that's gonna go to the incinerator. It might go in our demo or large household waste container, and be charged under the 15 cents per pound rate rather than the gallon weight per compactor.
All right.
If we, I'm, not to say that I'm not open to, if we wanna add a larger unit here, we certainly could.
It was just, from my perspective,
Yeah, 45-pound bags are pretty standard. You can get a 55-pound bag, but that's.
That's another one that we could keep the same for this year and relook at it next year if we're finding that people are coming with the, other than Bob, with the huge bags.
Yeah, keep it what it says, what we got here, right?
For this round.
Yep.
And prior, we had $4, or 4 tires that were free. We're gonna go $2 minimum on tires.
No more 4 for free?
No.
Doing 4 free per day, previously, we're running about $20,000 deficit each year, what it costs us to dispose of tires versus what we bring in. So this is designed to put some of that cost on the folks who are using that service, but it's still pretty affordable compared to, disposing of another.
Right.
I didn't hear what you just said, the last part. Still reasonable,
It's a very good, it's cheaper than it is in most jurisdictions.
Yeah.
oh, okay.
So, yes, several of the surrounding counties charge about $5 to $10 a tire. If you have your tires changed at pick a tire spot, Tire Plus or whatever, there's a $10 to $15 per charge tire disposal fee on that, so. Yeah, well, there's a few out there that $4, or that 4 tires a day isn't just once a year. It's once or twice or 3 times a week.
Yeah.
So those are the folks that were,
Right.
That abused it.
that this targets.
Okay.
But the question I then have about that is where it's $10 for semi and large truck or implement tires and $20 for tractor tires. We don't address rims there. We're not accepting rims on truck tires or tractor tires. No rims.
No rooms.
You don't want those.
I know it, but we did before.
Yes, auto tire, and there's an extra charge for that.
For autos.
Yep.
We're not accepting truck, we're not accepting tractor.
Correct.
Not with a tire on it. We'll take the rims from a truck or a tractor, but that's in the steel, that's different. Okay. And we aren't gonna take the tire off the rim for it.
No.
Okay.
I'm looking at the boat launch fee, $100 non-compliance fine. Jake's gonna do that, or how are we?
How are we gonna enforce that?
Yeah,
Yeah, that would start there, yeah. It's a bit of a paper tiger to put that on there, I think just to have some method of enforcing it, but I think most folks will be given the opportunity to just pay the boat fee.
Yeah, that's just, like you say, it's just a warning.
Yep.
Yeah, we're not gonna, yeah. It's fine to stay on there, just to let people know that it's, if you don't comply, it could be $100. Do we get a lot of countywide aerial imagery requests from the surveyor? It's a new fee.
Not a lot of them, but we have received a few, yes. And the last one specifically was somebody who runs a open source website of GIS data, and so they wanted to take what the county had paid money for and reshare it on their open source site. So, yeah.
Whenever I get someone who wants to get a copy of our aerial, I send them right through our Beacon Schneider
Yeah,
staff, and we don't have to do anything with them.
right.
Is
Yep.
that the same as what you're talking?
Now, it's a little different with somebody requesting basically the entire imagery set.
we just changed
Well, we send it to entire
Okay.
sets, yeah.
Okay, well then,
Which one? Wondering why we
that.
need
Change that to
to involve
non-household.
that one, we've already contracted out to have them take care of the
Waste.
databases.
Instead of
Inside the
non-house.
house,
open for discussion with Eric, I guess.
Under solid waste, oh, I'm sorry, where we have demo slash non-house, and we just put it household.
Yep,
Looking on the last page,
got it.
demo slash non-household.
Yeah.
Yep.
That would be your construction site demolition that would come. If you're putting on an addition,
Yeah.
you're putting on.
I understand, I'm just saying, and change it from just house to household.
Yes, it's correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
Much more
Okay.
accurate.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes.
Any other public comment on any of the fees here?
So motion to end the public hearing and go back into regular session.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. We're back in regular session.
So then I suggest a motion to approve the fee schedule with the 2 additional changes of the 3-2 temporary license to $10 and the highway department sign fees from $250 and $75. And then
Removing the notary fee
yeah.
line item and changing household under solid waste. That was it.
Can I ask for when would these take effect? This is,
To go into effect on 1 October. Just clarify that too
Okay.
in the motion.
So we need a motion to approve the updated fee schedule effective October 1st.
Why, we're awful close to October 1st, don't we want to give the public some notification of the change before it takes place? Or just bang?
You wanna make it November 1st? Give them
Well, I'm
30
just-
days. No, I understand
Yeah.
what you're saying, that's.
Valid point,
that's-
valid point.
That's a good point.
It is awful short notice to let the people at the drop sites know this,
Yeah,
because the attendants there are going to get a lot of backlash.
oh yeah. I think it should be posted
Public.
at the sites and then just so it's out there, if for 30 days, would that be better, or?
That would help.
So make it effective.
Or are you thinking something, well, no, it's in the paper,
If
or?
we can post it, 30 days seems like a long time, but if we can get it posted at least even a couple of weeks so that they can view it, that would be great.
I think we should post it for 30 days, make it November 1st
Yep.
effective.
Okay.
That's your motion.
Yep.
I'll second his motion.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed.
All right. We'll get the word out. We're at number 5. Yep.
Consider approval of competitive search for probationary appraiser trainee, certified Minnesota appraiser, CMA, non-income or income. And those are just to fill the vacancy created 9/7/19. I think the personnel committee, that must be your recommendation coming from the personnel committee?
Yeah, I just wanted to hold up here. Chief Deputy's here, maybe I'm assuming he's here for that ATV thing?
No, I was just with the ATV.
Oh, okay.
Dress
Okay.
We also got him coming up for that towards zero death.
Yeah, okay. That's fine. Okay, we can go on.
You'll wait.
You wait. Take a seat, you're making me nervous now.
I thought somebody must have hit the button or something when he walked in. The emergency button. Did you do that once?
I don't know.
Jack?
I think so, yeah.
I used to know.
Yeah.
got a button here.
Guns blazing.
Maybe that's it. They push and find out.
That's not it.
I don't even know where that is anymore.
I don't know where it is
All right,
either.
so we did discuss this position with the Personnel Committee. This is to fill a vacancy that was created. What we shared with the Personnel Committee is essentially a 4 to 5 year plan for the Assessor's Office that also involves not only this position, but the potential of a administrative clerk type position in that office as well. Not bringing that forward yet. The Personnel Committee, I think, wanted to discuss that further. But we do want to bring forth the filling this position so that we can get all of our appraisers up to speed. Definitely an essential position to get through where we're at right now in the assessor's office with going from a quintile to a quadrile to get all of our assessments caught up. Yeah.
Yeah, it was discussed that the fact that we're still behind on our appraisals that, and it's already in the budget, it's been in the budget, so this is just a replacement of someone who has left.
So is there a motion to approve competitive search?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Oh, further discussion?
Just a
I didn't
question.
have a second.
We didn't
Oh,
get a second
I
yet.
seconded.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't hear it either.
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't hear it either.
But with the second, I do have a question. Are we looking for an initial, like a trainee, or trying to find somebody that's certified, or?
That was discussed. Go ahead.
I would just say that we would welcome a trained-in person, but in our corner of the state, having Iowa and Wisconsin as borders, and where we are, I hate to bring it up, but pay-wise, I don't see that in the cards, although it could happen.
So we're looking the best that we can get based on the advertising we put out. Okay.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
I think we'll move on, leave the preliminary levy
Okay.
until we do number 7, which is the grant for the sheriff's office for zero deaths grant. And then we all got a copy of that in our packet. This is another one we get opportunity every year for. So I need a motion to,
So with regard to that towards zero death, that's special patrols regarding certain things, right?
Yes.
And the county is all over the place, and then the cities get that too?
Correct.
And then they go to different places? I mean, they don't patrol their area, they patrol,
They go to different areas throughout the county.
right.
So,
But the county can't do that, I mean, you're the county, so.
Yeah, the county's county. Let's say City of Caledonia, they'll focus on a certain area, so it's like City of Caledonia or Spring Grove might go to Crescent. And so they'll go there, and
Okay.
focus on certain things.
Okay.
Have we written any tickets for cell phone use since the new law came about?
I believe so, not many. I think a lot of our guys are just giving warnings, because it's a habit it's hard to break sometimes. So I don't see a problem with writing warnings for a while. It's hard not to just grab your phone,
Mm-hmm.
and the fine's not that cheap.
What is the fine?
It's over $100.
Yeah.
I think it was 150, yeah.
Curiosity question, does Iowa and Wisconsin have the same law?
I don't believe so.
No.
What's that?
Wisconsin's looking at it right now.
Right, but non-residents come through, and you see Wisconsin and Iowa talking on their phones coming through Minnesota. Ignorance of the law is no excuse, but,
Yeah, it's hard not to, though. I mean,
Yeah.
it's advertised, but people don't pay attention sometimes, too.
right. That's why they make hands free. I was so happy to be on the page.
So the request is for 13,000, is this the right one I'm looking at?
I believe so, Jeff has it up there.
Yeah, it is 13-1.
13,1,
And that's distributed throughout the whole county. with no
Okay.
agencies, too.
With that said, I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed?
Can we ask him about the other questions from the
About the
previous?
Certainly, yep.
You wanna come forward?
Sure.
Now that we know nobody pushed the emergency button.
Yeah.
That wasn't my concern.
Oh. Okay.
You wanna go ahead, Bob? or-
There's an off-highway vehicle enforcement grant program, I think it's $4,700 or $4,900 a year.
For 2 years.
For 2 years.
Correct.
We were told that he's talking about using that to get a side-by-side instead of type all-terrain vehicles.
Yes.
Side-by-side. Do you also have to provide public training on safety training for the public as
We
part of
don't,
the
we
grant?
don't have to at all.
So the reporting, there's reporting requirements that go with it. You just report that you're buying a ATV and not doing any training or anything?
Correct. We just, if it's just for purchasing, we just gotta show them the invoices or the billing
Okay.
within the correct time period.
It's not a requirement to do this other safety training.
No, it's not safety, it can just be
Okay.
enforcement, it can,
Okay.
just be for DNR,
Yep.
safety.
All right,
And when you read
the grant.
the grant,
Yeah.
there's lines about training and lines about equipment and
Right, there's a lot of stuff. That's what you can use it for.
Okay,
So you can use it for training if you wanna use it for training, so they give you all the options.
Right.
okay,
So, if you wanted to spend some on this, some on that, you sure can.
Yep.
okay. But you don't have to, it's just, okay.
Yep.
Now I
You can
understand.
pick and choose what, yep, all right.
Okay.
Just want a clarification on that.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right. That was tough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Sure helps that he sat down before, huh? Okay. Last action item is to set the preliminary levy amount for 2020. And we got quite a bit of information from Carol and Jeff, our administrator, quite a few pages, showing our, what our tax capacity was, what our CPA was. And now we need to make a decision what we're gonna set the preliminary at. Carol, do you wanna say anything or address any explanation, or Jeff?
I think Jeff sent out the information on Friday, which provided some information regarding an increase in values in the county and how that would be, reduce the amount that we would need to levy to balance the budget, still use some fund balance. I don't know if there were any questions that you had sent to them on that.
I've got, sorry, from a budget perspective, as you see on the sheets.
Are you on this sheet?
Yeah, yeah. So the first column on that, of course, is our raw budget inputs. The second column is the budgets with the proposed budget adjustments that you've seen through our discussions on the budget. Those include the addition of the health services nurse and the case aide position in public health and human services, and then a rough estimate of what the fee schedule changes that were approved would yield within the budget for next year. And so that changes the overall net levy increase to 6.3% from just that perspective, which, in looking at our net capacity change, results in an estimated tax increase from the county perspective of 2.19%. So, using fund balance, I would suggest that we can set the levy increase at 5%, which has a very less than a 1% impact on the county tax amount to the taxpayers.
For the preliminary.
For the preliminary.
Yep.
Yeah. And then we will continue to strive to cut the budget where we can and continue to refine it. And make a decision further down the road if we wish to use more fund balance to bring that down.
But my only question then is, the 5% is actually a 1% to the taxpayer?
Yes.
So there's 4% coming from,
There's an overall net tax capacity rate across the county increase of a little over 4%.
so the people that had their homes reevaluated,
Yeah.
reassessed, because of that assessment, they'll go up whatever that is plus 1%. I mean, that's where the tax, besides new construction, the tax capacity also takes into consideration the assessed valuation changes.
Yes.
So as an example, for Jack's district in La Crescent, where they had the huge increases, they'll have their taxes will go up because of the increase in value plus 1% overall.
Yes.
Right, okay.
If we went to 5.
If we went with
If
5.
we went with 5. If
And
went
we
with
cannot go any higher than that, higher than our preliminary. We have to only go down from there.
I've seen the numbers coming in just for reference point. Every county's different, of course. I've received the preliminary levies for about 40 counties so far, and it averages out to right at 5%, actually, I think is maybe between 4.5% and 5% is what it would average out to. There's a couple of outliers in the 10% category, and then there's a couple in the 2-3%.
Right, but is that anywhere from 2 to 10, is that what they're talking about? I mean, we say 5 with an actual 1.
Yeah.
Are they saying 2 to 10 with an actual something different, or that's what they're talking? 2 to 10?
I only have their,
That can be changed different for every
Yeah,
county.
every county's different.
I only have their preliminary levy number. I don't
Right.
have their actual net tax number. A couple provided that, most didn't.
Now, on our preliminary levy set here, Carol, I wanted to get a clarification. The CPA is left out, correct?
Yes, for the percentage increase, but then when you look at the net increase to the levy, that's factored in.
It's back in? So like the CPA's back in, or out, but back in, and then there was the para rate, is that part of it too, or no? Or ag credit, I mean. There's like 3 things that are taken out first, right?
Well, no.
Or am I,
When the levy is put into the budget, it's just put in as a lump sum figure,
right?
and that's that initial levy amount that you have on that trifold sheet.
Yep.
And then down below it, you can see where the CPA is subtracted. But then when we do the tax calculation and the total settlement, that's when it gets distributed to those different line items, the ag credit, the disparity.
Right, yeah,
reduction.
like we discussed last Tuesday, yep.
Yeah. The CPA is changed initially because we know that amount. We don't know those other amounts until the taxes are calculated.
Okay. The ag credit part,
And the disparity reduction.
disparity reduction too.
Now I've got jotted down here on the sheet, 2.19, but I don't remember what that referred to.
That is at our initial, down at the bottom right-hand column here.
Yep.
Under our initial 6.37% levy increase.
Okay.
That's what the estimated tax capacity rate change is. That would be the net effect of the tax. So, and then the final column on there is for example, a $250,000 residence. That would be an increase in their annual taxes of about $33.
Okay.
And then that other spreadsheet I shared with you has the impacts on residential property, land property, all of our different categories of properties.
Okay.
I was thinking that if,
But I pulled a 250K house just for a
Yep.
sample.
And 5% would be $14 increase.
Yep.
And there's gonna be a school issue too.
Yeah, this is just the county portion of
This is
tax.
the county portion.
Each township sets their own levy, each city sets their own, each school district sets their
But,
own, which
yeah,
all,
but with a
Which all have an effect on the final tax bill.
with a referendum
Yep.
passing. If we go with the 5%, I want to see would like to see a concerted effort to lower that, because, as Bob mentioned, my area got hit with the reassessment, and I think the rationale in the end was explanatory, but that doesn't put any more money in the checkbook. So, and then you put the school referendum, and then you put it just gets to be burdensome. And so I think a concerted effort to, as Teresa mentioned, we can go down, we can't go up. So I guess as a safety net of sorts, we probably should go ahead with the 5, but work diligently to get
Bring it
below
down.
that.
I was thinking of going with the 4, that way, because these go out on your estimated tax calculations when you get in the mail. And seeing as how like your district and a lot of people got hit hard last time around, if we kept it at 4, they wouldn't see that much of that would be a pretty neutral number. And I feel that would be, still would be enough if something would happen, we couldn't lower it, but, I feel that 4% would be sufficient. I don't know what you guys' thoughts are, but that would keep it neutral in the tax statements, given what their valuations came out at and stuff like that.
I think the only concern I'd have is that we don't want to cut ourselves too short in case something changes between now and December when we put in our final. We can't go up above whatever we'd set today.
Right.
We're stuck there.
Right.
And at 5%, taking the adjustments into consideration, a net under 1% increase is a pretty reasonable number as it stands. Not to the people of La Crescent, especially with the school district, but I think at the 5.
That's what I'm getting at.
I know it, but I think at the 5%, we've got room, we're not locked in, but we can still cut it down to 4 or 3 or whatever it works out to with the fine tuning. I'm a little leery of getting too low and then not having any place to go if something comes up. We do have other places that we can come up with revenue pretty easily, I think.
And 5% is already limiting us below what our, what the budget right now is looking like. When the budget right now, if those changes are approved and into the budget, we're looking at a 6.6% increase overall.
Before the adjustment.
Before the adjustment. So 5% is limiting us already. Yeah, bear in mind, there's, the 3% personnel cost increase across the board. We're very fortunate that the insurance rates did not go up this year. But overall, every other contract and such that we have, those costs continue to rise. So there's our ability to cut things is limited.
I think we're pretty much doing what we can. We obviously have some room on the downside yet, probably not a lot, but like Bob said, things can change, stuff can happen. I think we've got to protect ourselves a little bit, so I'd go with the 5.
Is that a motion?
We need a motion.
Sure, I'll move.
I'll second. I'd ask that we'd vote by roll.
Okay. District 1.
Yes.
Aye.
No.
1? No, I'm 5. I'm sorry. I'm just turned around today, guys.
Well, if people are upset, you can be 1.
I made the motion.
District 2.
I got enough trouble.
I'll go with 5. I'd rather be 4, but I'm not gonna get into the argument on that, so.
District 3.
Aye.
District 4.
Aye.
District 5.
Aye.
Motion passed. Preliminary is set at 5%. Oh. We have to have the budget number now, which is, where do I go? Okay, our budget number would be what, the 12,920,537?
No.
What are you looking for, Carol?
Hang on.
Okay,
13,271 dollars.
That's our total, I mean, our total budget is the 30 million.
Oh, yeah, right.
oh, I don't have that
Okay.
sheet in front of me right now.
I don't think I got that
I
figure.
don't have it either.
No.
Hang on a
no,
sec.
we don't. Not on our sheets.
Oh. Our total budget was 29,226,859.
That sounds.
That's on this sheet.
I thought it was higher than that.
Well, I'm looking at the, one of those pages we got.
30,510,569.
There you go.
30, 510,
569.
569.
It's crazy.
Motion to adopt the preliminary.
Okay. We need a motion to certify that amount for our budget.
I'll make that a motion to certify that amount for our preliminary budget.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay.
Passed. Okay.
My email is gone haywire.
Okay.
Okay. Couple of administrative updates then, I think that's.
Yep, we're
where
on to
at.
discussion items here. Administrator updates.
All right. In your packet is a letter of notification of the 2 trout stream easements. You've got a copy of that. 2 folks have, I have a copy here, donated their land there through easement for trout fishing, so new spot to fish.
Yeah, I don't think it's a donation. It's just-
Well,
It's just an
it's a
easement.
sale, yeah, I'm
Right,
sorry.
yeah.
Yep. Yep, not a donation. The Veterans Treatment Court, we attended that opening ceremony on Friday afternoon. Governor spoke, Chief Justice for the state spoke, and a few others. So,
Multiple judges.
multiple judges spoke. So that is now official and up and running. We had our first participation in that via VTC last week. So happy to see that's up and going. We had our initial outbrief from the audit for the 2018 season. I think the Finance Committee heard about that this morning. There was overall opinion on it was unmodified, which is the best we could do on that. So hats off to Carol and the rest of the finance team for those overall results. There were a few findings that relate to overall program administration and such. One is to have a federal procurement policy in place. And then a routine one that shows up is our segregation of duties due to not having enough staff to segregate some of those. And then
Verifying our credit card payments.
right, yeah, the making sure the board sees the transactions on that, so.
And complete applications.
Yeah. So,
They reviewed 40 applications for human services and only found one that didn't have all the signatures. That's very good compared to other audits that are done.
So we will resolve the processing issues and paperwork, policy documentations, but overall, very, very successful results on that. And what else? This came up this morning. Sam contacted me. There is this still has names on it, so I won't share it publicly yet. But there's a statute out there that we have not had to, fortunately, not had to use in Houston County in anyone's recollection, and that is for the county to pick up the expenses of cremation, burial, and funerals if no next of kin can be found, and we now have one of those cases. So just came up this morning, and so I will work with Sam to figure out how we tackle this. Unless, Carol, you recall crossing paths with this?
There is a human services line item for county burials,
Okay.
and we use a few of them each year.
Okay. We'll talk afterwards then. Yep. Sam just called me with that this morning, so. And that's what I have for the moment.
Fred, do you have anything you want to share?
You know, we've had a couple of meetings of the highway, excuse me, the highway building project committee, and we're going to have more, obviously. Things are moving. This time, I've said before, I thought we were going to get something done, and then it didn't happen. I think this time around, this run, I think we'll actually get something done.
I think we have a focus as a board to get something done.
Yeah, we've had that before, and it hasn't
I
materialized.
know, but now we're actually moving forward with the.
I've
the
actually
additional-
got hope this time, yes, I really do, yeah.
Where are you at?
Well, now that we are sure of the land, then we can start getting really serious about specifically what are we going to put there. We have to know specifically, or at least pretty close, what we're going to put there in order to build a retention pond. Because you don't want the thing, you don't want the thing way too big, you don't want it way too small, so you got to be a little careful with that. You don't have to have everything nailed down really tight, but you've got to have a pretty good idea. And the general objective, as I understand it, is to get the retention pond, that kind of business, pretty well formulated, and maybe even a little bit of digging done yet this fall. Well, that gets into the footprint of the building or buildings. So we are working diligently on that. I know where there was an email that talked about another meeting, and I don't know whether that's happened or not yet, whether we're going to schedule that or not. But that's all I'm going to report at this point on that one.
Are we looking at the design build problematically, or?
Yeah, we're open to either one, either architect or design build. There are obviously some advantages either way. And we've got to figure out, what's the contract say? The theoretical advantage, as I understand it, to the architectural business is that you have somebody design or do the architectural work for you, and then if you pay for those plans, they're your plans. You can hire anybody you want to hire to do the work. The architect will work with him. He's been paid, he'll work. The design build, you make up your mind what firm you want to do the whole thing, and then they do the designing. Maybe they hire out a little bit of it, or maybe they don't. But they do the designing, and then they also just move right into the building. Well, a design build firm has an advantage as far as what they call architectural work is concerned. Because the design build firm does not have to really include everything in their architectural design. Because if they're going to be doing the building anyway, they can put this over here and that over there, and so maybe make their architectural fee look like it's a whole lot less. The architectural firm, they do their architecture, they got to get paid for it. So they got to have everything in there, which gives the design build an advantage. It isn't a real big advantage because there's a certain amount, I mean, you can only quote, hide, unquote, a certain amount of stuff. But that's the basics of it to me.
But we tell them what we want, square footage, number of stalls, office area and conference areas and whatnot. And then they provide a design and we look at the designs and pick the one we want. Because each of the
Yeah.
design builds will have something a little different.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And
Then you
it
fine-tune.
might be an interesting process to get enough agreement to be able to move forward in a really timely fashion.
Well, once we know the
Say.
square footage and
Yeah,
office
yeah,
and shop.
Yeah, I know. But there's a fair amount of stuff that plays into that.
Mhm.
So we've got, it'll be interesting in the next couple months.
It'd be nice if we had something that we could decide on,
That part of it.
that part of it, so we could get going and be prepared to start next year.
I think that's what we gotta do is decide as a board the square footage, what we want to have in order, because we're gonna have to bid this out, are we not? To other, I mean, we can't just pick a firm and say we're gonna go with them. I think we have to bid it out, so.
That much
Well,
money for
and
sure.
we're looking at a couple of different approaches.
According to
on that.
Brian, we don't.
You don't?
No.
Well, that's what I wanna find out. If you don't have to, that's fine. I just wanna make sure, legality, what we
disagree.
have to do.
I would disagree. If we're at a $4 or $5 million building, I don't see how we cannot
Bid it out.
advertise it for bids.
No. What he's talking about is certain parts of the design phase.
Okay.
That we don't have to advertise for a bid on that, because they would be below the minimum amount. Jeff was gonna check on that. You did. I didn't see you going like this, so I assume. we're all-
175,000 is the threshold. Over that, we have to.
Yeah,
have to
we're
bid.
nowhere near
So
that
we-
for what we need right now.
What I would add to Fred's report is that last week, we went out and looked at several buildings. We went with the intent of looking at one, and then ended up looking at three. And so they were a variety of construction style and sizes and such. And so somewhere in between all of what we saw is what we want. One of them was about $1 million facility that's a little smaller than we need. One of them was a $5-ish million facility that's probably bigger than what we need. Then also last week, and we didn't have a full committee to meet with them, but we had one of the architects that we've talked to in the past met with us, and he's offered us a proposal for essentially a pre-design phase, and that would include a site design and then scoping documents for moving forward with a design build on the actual facilities. And so that price for that comes, if his offer comes in below a threshold, we'd have to build. So it'd just be making a decision on moving forward with that or not.
Significantly below.
Is this that norm that was referred to in the email?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
What firm is that, or you don't wanna?
Barrientos, something or another out of Madison. I can't remember the exact.
Yeah, Barrientos, and his firm specializes in this type of facility. So,
I would add that one of the buildings we looked at, I would term to be more than sufficient for our needs, and we would not have to involve any other architecture to make tweaks and adjustments to that particular building. So I can be a little adamant about not getting this more complicated than it needs to be.
That would be good if it wasn't complicated and we could move forward.
Well, I don't think it would have to be. I mean, the building was built by a county contractor. They obviously have the plans, they built it. So if we have to make a change to a plan that is already there, we say, what would it involve to do this? And we don't need this, we'd like to add this. I mean, I can't
That's not,
see how that could be all that complicated, quite frankly.
And you're referring to the Peterbilt building?
I am.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's a Houston County contractor, you said.
Yes.
We can't
We can't.
specify that
No.
in our bid. I mean,
No.
we come up with a plan similar to what the building you're talking about is. Ask the contractors to put together a design-build quote for us on the basis of the size that we're talking about.
Right,
Then we'll have to pick the contractor we want based on the presentation.
right.
Then you fine-tune it after the fact,
Mhm.
once you've decided, right?
Boy, I can get hairy
substantially,
here.
yes.
Otherwise, we have somebody put together like this Barrientos, a design plan, and then give that out and say, here's the area that you got to work with. You give us a design build based on this area. Now everybody's basically on the same page.
Yep.
It'd just be nice if we could get something put together to move forward.
Yeah, and that's the direction that we're trying.
And make a decision on square footage and how much we wanna spend.
Yeah.
It
Those are
depends
not
on
easy,
design. I
quick-
mean,
Well,
are we
yeah,
steel,
right.
or are we rock or block or whatever,
Right,
you know.
right.
Those are not easy, quick decisions sometimes.
I guess we depend on the committee to come forth with information and we can decide. Okay.
And my basic question was in the background that I didn't bring out very well. Do we have another meeting scheduled?
We can certainly schedule one. We don't have one yet, but we
Okay.
can.
But we're working in
Yeah,
that
I
direction.
wish we would.
Okay.
Yep.
Preferably sooner rather than later, obviously.
We'll nail that down when we're done here.
Pardon me?
We'll nail that down after the meeting. We'll schedule it.
Yeah, okay.
Anything else, Fred? That's a big thing.
I don't dare open another can of worms.
Well, let's have it.
I'll leave the next one to Bob, I'm okay.
Bob,
Couple of things. Jeff and I and our veteran service officer were over at the Preston ribbon cutting. Interesting conversation. Hopefully it works out as well as they're anticipating as far as providing a service to the veterans, and notch it down a little bit so that they've got some opportunities to resolve their issues and their problems without going into a full-fledged court situation. So I thought that was interesting. The other night, and Eric, you'll probably address this too, but we went to the chronic wasting disease presentation in Rushford. Different than talking with the DNR guys as far as the rules and whatnot. This was more about the specifics of the disease and how it spreads and what's happened in different areas that he talked about. And if you don't take a direct action against it, it's gonna grow and it'll grow pretty fast. He talked about one area where they were very aggressive. The people in the legislature withdrew funding because they didn't like what was happening. and they had it down to where there was almost no chronic wasting disease, and as soon as they quit, after a couple of 4 or 5 years, it was up to 25-30%.
Yeah, they weren't allowed to follow
They
through
couldn't
with it.
follow
Yep.
through. Then he talked about different places and whatnot. One thing I did find interesting is one of the new rules is everybody, when you shoot a deer in the chronic wasting disease area, you gotta bring the head to get it tested. That takes, during the bow season, it's 3 to 5 days. During the gun season, it's gonna be 7 to 10, maybe 15 days because of the volume. The DNR warden said that in our chronic wasting, the overall chronic wasting area, there's about 8,000 deer were shot last year, with 37 deer that tested positive. So if you've got 8,000 deer all having to be tested, they want you to take the bones and whatnot,
Carcass.
the carcass, to a dump site in St. Charles or Rochester, or they want it buried. I don't know too many guys that are gonna be wanting to take their carcasses to St. Charles. Maybe the guys in Preston will. But one thing he said was, you get the results back and it's positive for CWD, or it might not have CWD. I thought the test was a little more exact than that,
No, it's either a positive or not detected.
not detected. So, that bothered me a little bit. I mean, from the point of view that they can't detect it, but maybe you do have CWD. I'd like it if they had a little more accurate testing.
The phrase makes you suspicious.
Yeah. The other thing is that they're working on different things, and, you know, if they could come up with some kind of a, not an inoculation, but something that they could, say, put on feed or something that would make an immunity for the deer, it'd be nice if they could design something like that instead of just studying the thing, but that was a little,
There's all kinds of things on the wish list.
yeah.
Yeah.
But as of right now, there is no technology to combat this, and they wish there was, but really there isn't nothing that they can fight this with. The only one that works, and it's not very popular, and that's to eliminate the herd or decrease the herd. And eliminate, that's people don't like to hear that, but where it's been done, it stops it cold. But,
Well, what are you referring to as the herd? Every deer in the county, or?
yeah,
In the area.
in the area, in the zone. And I can see both sides of the issue on this with the hunters, the landowners. I mean, if you try to eliminate the herd or decrease the herd substantially, that's gonna affect land values, the hunters are gonna be upset. But if you don't, it is going to grow. It is going to further keep getting worse. It's a double-edged sword. I mean,
What, did you see the last day or so of the new
Yeah,
one
they
where
found.
a no-see-um?
oh, there's a blue tongue, is that what that?
I don't know, it killed one deer and they found another one infected, I guess,
Yeah.
and,
EFD or EHD, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's just until the osmometres stop biting, when the frost hits, that usually happens.
Yep, the frost kills that. He touched on
You
that.
talked about that.
As soon as
He
the
did.
killing frost, that kills that virus.
But from the local economy point of view, I think the DNR is trying to address this without being complete eradication.
Right.
They're allowing now $3, a hunter can get a buck during the
Bowl.
bow, gun, and muzzleloader season, so you can get $3. They've eliminated the 4 points on one side rule, so you can shoot any kind of a buck. You can buy your additional tag for a doe. You can also buy a disease tag for $2.50 for all kinds of does. So, you know, they can increase the volume. Based on the graphs that this fellow talked about, it's the mature bucks that have the most propensity to have the disease, right?
Yep.
The older bucks, what was the percentage, 60, 70%?
Yep.
Something like that. The older does are 30, 35%. The younger deer don't show up with as much of the disease, but it's maybe because they're young enough and it hasn't progressed. They might have it, but it hasn't progressed. But the older they get, the stronger the likelihood is that you're gonna have a deer with chronic wasting disease. So they're trying to address it by allowing more deer to be taken to reduce the
The herd.
chronic wasting disease in the herd.
Yep.
The, you know, people I think would have a problem with eliminating the herd when you've got 37 out of 8,000 taken. I don't know how many deer there are in the county, the chronic wasting disease
Yeah, I've asked for
area.
that number and they don't.
They don't know the
No,
number.
well, they probably do, they gotta look it up.
They don't want you, it's
Okay.
too high.
So.
But that's what, you know, you remember that story about over in Norway?
Yeah,
Where they found it over there in the reindeer.
blamed us for it.
Yeah, of course, but, and they took it seriously, and they just, what they did is, and they went in there and they killed every reindeer in that zone, every one. And then they monitored next year, they found 3 more. They
That had
killed,
wandered in there.
that wandered in there, they killed them too. But since they've done that, it has not spread at all. Now, it wasn't popular, it was a lot of upset people, but it stopped it cold. They'll come back in it's gonna take time.
I don't think they'll let them back for 10 years, right?
Yeah, so, it's a tough one, but it's so easily transmitted that I don't know how you can ever control it. I mean, you can get it so many ways. It is not transmittable to the bovine cattle. It'd have to be injected into their nervous system in order for them to get it, so that's not a concern, and as of right now, there's no human concern either, so.
So if somebody ate one unknowingly, they wouldn't necessarily have any effect.
Right, as long as you didn't touch the nervous system. So when you quarter debone it, that's the safest way to do it.
I'll remember that when I start deer hunting.
And then the other thing that I was gonna report on was the finance committee meeting this morning. We talked with Carol, mostly about budget and those issues that we've already discussed today. Current budget situation as far as 2019 is not out of whack. I mean, we're running pretty close to on target as far as the budget for this year is concerned, so there's no major issues with this year's budget. And we're 3/4 of the way through the year, so.
Where's the wood?
Right underneath, close to this
Oh,
button.
easy on that button down there.
I will have him back.
That's all Teresa, I did have a question.
Yes,
Did you want to go to that deal in St. Cloud?
yes, I do.
So we should talk to Jeff after the meeting at 7.
Okay. As long as it's just for the day,
Yeah,
though, yeah.
it'll be an early morning leave.
Will you pick me up in the Crescent?
Yep.
Otherwise, I have to be up at 3:30.
I'll pick you up.
Yes.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Yeah, and I just basically added in what I was at that Thursday night meeting too about the CWD, so that's all I had too.
We
Well, I
know
went to
Jack's
the,
gonna be long.
the AMC Policy Committee meeting 2 weeks ago. At our work session, I asked about licensed alcohol and drug counselor, and I was, and John said we're covered. What that would be, you'd have to have somebody licensed to assess whether to commit somebody or deal with drug and alcohol issues, and we're already doing that through Hiawatha Valley, so that was not a concern. They indicated what the 2020 legislative priorities are from AMC. I'll just quickly, streamlining Minnesota's food safety system. That involves, these inspections are either from the health department or the ag department, and they can't decide between the two of them who's responsible for what, when, and it just makes it real complicated to start a new business, because now things that have changed, grocery stores now have delis and some have restaurants and some, so it just complicates that, and so hopefully that'll get streamlined somehow. how this came about, I'm not sure, but enhanced services for children with asthma. They support changes to the medical assistance to allow for coverage of in-home visits for children with asthma, coverage of products that reduce asthma triggers, and referral to follow-up of educational services. I'm not familiar with asthma issues, but apparently it's to the point that they feel the state needs to make some changes. Maintain and increase public health funding. That's kind of an ongoing one. And they support increasing the tobacco purchase age from 18 to 21 to protect health and prevent addiction in young people. And in addition, lots of continued discussion about the opioid issue and the workforce issue. We had a presentation from a gentleman about the upcoming census, and I know Teresa was involved last time, but it's a important issue because the last census, Minnesota came within 8,000 residents from losing a legislator. So get out the vote is the cry. And so it was interesting. I may have mentioned at the workshop, but the census is printed in 13 languages. 2 that aren't are Hmong and Somalian because it's a federal form, and Minnesota's the only state with a big concentration of both, so they didn't see fit to print it just for us, I guess, so anyhow. But I think those are the highlights at least. And that's all I got.
Very good. And those are good conferences, and really you learn a lot. I had EMS and meeting last week in Rochester, and one area that they are really growing in is recertification for our EMS people, of course, and CPR programs, because even pharmacists are required now by law to have a CPR. So it's increased so much, and we do a lot of that kind of educating. But what they've done is they've gone to e-learning, where you can do almost everything on the computer, and then they just go to our nurse that's in charge of it for EMS for the skill part, and that would only take like a half hour. So people are really getting their certification a lot easier, and that's where some of our money, we decided we're gonna appropriate, will go toward that. Another thing that we got some money for Narcan, because we're required every patrol car, every ambulance service has to have at least 2 doses available all the time, and it expires very easily within the year. So then they have to buy another dose. And they're finding that some of the testing that they're doing is not really expiring unless it's been heated or cold or,
not stored properly.
Storage probably. So we're trying to get legislation to say it's not really expiring. It's like everything you buy nowadays has an expiration date on it. Well, they're re-looking at that because it's getting too costly for counties and services to buy this Narcan all the time. So they're really working on that. They have this, it's called critical incident team that goes around, like if there's a bad car accident or a child is killed or somebody, that'll go in and do a debriefing with the people involved, and it's really growing. We used to do a couple a month, and now we're doing, I think the last quarter we had 55 incidents in this region. So people are taking advantage of getting some debriefing to deal with trauma situations. So that was real interesting. And then I had workforce development with our new director, and she's really focused on more trades instead of college training. So they're doing big promotions for concrete users, welders, medical field people, and they're gonna start going to the schools and getting kids more involved in learning a skill and not so focused that you have to go to college. They found people go for 4 or 5 years of college and work at Menards, you know, and then they have this huge loans and everything that they can't afford. So there's gonna be more and more action on careers for those who aren't really interested in college, to let them know what's really out there. Apprenticeship programs, and one of the programs that they just came up, and I talked to Allison about it too, is businesses have been coming to Workforce and EDA requesting programs where the business themselves will take in more residents, or one of them that she talked to me about was focusing on farmers are wanted because they're such good workers, hard workers, and we can be more flexible. Okay, you can only work a couple hours a day on this day or that, and being more flexible and giving these farmers more opportunities for income to subsidize their own income or lack of it. So that was, there's been, it was a real good strategic planning for Workforce. And those were my 2 main meetings. And then we, Eric and I have been, we all received that letter from the Yucatan, was she Yucatan? No, Sheldon Township
Sheldon
Care.
Township, yeah.
And I've been working with Brian on it, and he is addressing the issue very well, exactly what we can do as far as weed control, options that are available, and I will get back to this lady. I can't get her on the phone, and I know Eric's had the same problem, so I'm gonna mail her Brian's findings. It's very detailed. So that's my main things.
Yeah. I just wanted to add another thing too. I just remembered, we had a Bluff Country HRA meeting here quarterly. And it was a phone conference. It was gonna be in Rushford. We were gonna have a face-to-face meeting, but it didn't work out for everybody, so it just ended up being another phone conference. But with Doug Grout on as the new SEMCAC leader, and he wanted to participate in this meeting because this is what his background is and what he was doing in his previous job on housing. So he's come up with a couple of ideas that he wants to look into and get more information on, and they're going to try it out in Rushford, city of Rushford now, for providing, they're not grants, they're loans to people who, for fixing up their houses or whatever, and they'd have to have, you know, equity to cover it, of course, but so they're it's kind of good to have him on board now with his expertise and looking how we can utilize HRA more effectively around the region. So he'd get back to us with more details as he works on it. So I just wanted to let you know on that.
I'll make one humor comment. On our agendas, when I read to the back side where it says reminders,
They're all
Yeah.
old,
I'd like it to say remember when's.
Yes. I noticed that too.
I'm done.
Yeah, I thought maybe that the
imply a motion for adjournment?
Pretty quick.
Preston thing had been changed.
Okay, is there any other public comment at the end of the meeting here?
That's,
And I did get the note with regard to the
I think we're-
Go Green.
So,
Move to adjourn.
second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.